The meeting of the North Andover School Committee for June 2nd. Sorry. Just a reminder, we're back in session, and I'd like to start by Pledge of Allegiance and stay standing at the conclusion of the Pledge of Allegiance for a moment of silence in recognition of the passing of Mr. Gordon.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. For those who may have known Mr. Gordon, a very prominent member of our town, previous town manager, previous school committee member, finance committee member, recently passed. So I appreciate the honor and the recognition this evening. On to our agenda. I'd like to start with any public comment on any agenda topic or any matter. And seeing none, move on to a recognition. I think we have one recognition this evening, and Matt's not here. Well, that's awkward. Do we have a, well, so we can catch up with him, I guess, before he graduates or during his graduation ceremony, just say thank you for our graduating senior. He said he was coming.
Why don't we give him a few minutes? He's kind of on senior time.
Did he get back from Canada? That's
right, exactly.
Runs a little bit slower.
We might come back.
So
more flexibility.
Let's move on. Maybe Courtney has a few comments.
There you go.
We'll move on to our student report then. How are you?
Good, how are you?
I bet you the parking's real sweet now at the high school.
Yeah, definitely. I had the back parking space where
Perfect.
the teachers were, but then everyone else, like all my friends, are starting to park in the senior area. So that's a benefit, but then everyone still really misses them. A lot of classes are pretty much empty. One of my friends has a class where the rest were seniors, and she's the only one in it now. So It's pretty depressing, but at the same time...
Individualized instruction.
Yeah.
Differentiate. There you go.
The school year's coming down to a wind down. Everyone's preparing for finals, and juniors got our schedules today, and it's getting pretty backed up in guidance, but I'm pretty sure that will blow over soon, and everyone will get everything figured out. That's it.
Great. So thank you. I know it's been a very long year, and I'm not sure if we'll see you next meeting or not. So I just want to also thank you for your service this year. We look forward to another wonderful year. Thank you very much.
Thank you for having me, and have a nice summer.
Have a good summer.
Great.
Matt's watching home, maybe you should do.
Yeah, he'll get run on down, ride the bike. Yeah. Oh no. Great. The next item on the agenda is consent agenda. And this evening we have a donation from the North Andover Music Association. I'd like to introduce Mr. Marty McGrath, perhaps. And thank you, Ms. Hurst. Maybe you can. Well, before we take the testimony, is there a motion to accept the donation from the North Andover Music Association in the amount of $25,683?
So moved.
Is there a second? Second. Great. So I'd like to hear, if we can, a little bit from Mr. McGrath and Ms. Hurst.
Sure. Thank you very much. Good evening, everyone. I'll just list a number of things. The North Andover Music Association has been very busy, and so in our May 14th letter of our donation, we were able to provide to the school district chorus dresses, chorus tuxes, garment bags, a clinician, cymbals for the NAMS band, support for students attending Allstate, support for the NAMS Jazz Band, as well as funding for the chorus, 8th grade band, and NAMS Jazz Band to participate in the Great East Festival.
Where they both won platinums.
And the chorus got a gold.
And the chorus got a gold,
Yes. Provided transportation for students to attend junior districts auditions, made a donation for the Virginia trip, and also provided transportation for participation in the MICA gold medal performance out in Worcester. The total of all of those donations is $13,598. Does anyone have any questions about any of those things? The second,
I think you didn't say what they won in the Virginia trip, just so that we're consistent.
Kim, go ahead.
They won 4 gold medals. And that, yes.
Yes. Very nice.
Yeah.
Oh, and there were 19 different performances on Friday, and only 3 platinums were given, and we got 2 of them. So that was some interesting information.
That is unbelievable.
Yeah.
And we're very pleased in our May 17th letter to be making the donation of a Yamaha grand piano for the NAMS chorus teacher for her program there. We donated a Yamaha grand piano, which was just under $10,000, as well as a piano dolly cover and lock to allow the piano to be moved from the classroom to other parts of the school, particularly cafeteria or the stage for performances. The piano cover and lock will help protect the instrument and keep it in good shape. It's a wonderful instrument. We've been able to hear it so far. It really has improved their program. We also provided $1,000 to pay for a clinician and other expenses for the North Andover Jazz Night, which is a joint night with the high school and the middle school performing, and they also get the benefit of working with a local clinician. And so it's a really great enrichment for both the high school and middle school students. And the piano donation was quite a lot of work, if you can imagine, trying to raise in a short period of time, and it was a short period of time, over $10,000 for this donation. So if you don't mind, I'd like to thank a few people who really helped us achieve that.
Please do.
So first, I'd like to go ahead and thank all of the NAMA board for all of their really hard work. All of these folks put in a lot of extra time going to middle school events and helping with all of our fundraising efforts. In particular, I'd like to point out and thank Kim Hurst, our NAMA treasurer, for leading the NAMS Piano Fund activities and for being tireless and relentless and
And she is the
taskmaster.
Those are traits that are not unfamiliar.
Yes. I'd also like to thank a number of folks and organizations who made significant donations to the piano fund. The North Andover Merchants Association purchased a large block of the raffle tickets that we had, and then they were generous enough to donate their winnings right back to us when one of the tickets got pulled.
Wow.
I did that too. He got pulled.
There were a number of other raffle winners who also donated their winnings back to the fund. I won't name everyone. As well as the Sargent School PTO class of 2014 and 2015, who made significant donations, and William Shea and Susan McConnellow, Kevin and Kimberly Dowdy, and the board's own Andrew McDevitt, who made significant contributions. And so I'd like to thank them all very much. And so the total of that donation is $12,085.
That's quite impressive. And actually, I have an email from Andrea Liakos, who is the NAMS course director, who couldn't be here, but I do want to just summarize a few of her thoughts. She indicated that the piano arrived on the 17th, and her class already had significant benefit as a result. Her students quoted, "It's just like Glee," and she can actually get up and interact with the students as part of the education and the teaching and learning. She indicated that you unveiled the piano at the 20th at the Lemonade and Live Music event, which is very similar to the high school's coffee house. There were quite a few presentations and quite a few performances, including an event last night at the Stevens Library to celebrate fine and performing arts at NAMS, which evidently went over quite well with over 200 people in attendance. She goes on and just really touts how important the instrument is to her students and her classes. And I'll quote, "In closing, to have North Andover Music Association invest in my program, in particular this year, is truly a blessing and an honor. I only want to impress the school committee and ITU how great it is to work in a community where the arts are such an important part of school culture." So I can't say anything more than that, but again, the middle school is an important feeder program to the high school. The work that Andrea, Mr. Inos, Mr. Nelson does, absolutely critical to continuing the transition to high school, and the work you do across the district is quite noteworthy.
There's more. We
Thank
just
you.
got an email from the from the North Andover Women's Club, who did Shop to Your Drop last week, with us as the beneficiary. And the Thompson School needs new equipment, and by the end of the year, the Thompson School will have about $1,000 worth of equipment that we'll be able to do just because people went shopping last week. Oh, and a lot of people came to our car wash.
There you go.
A lot of people. So
30 cars in
we'll
the
have that
parade.
presentation later, but just saying, I just got the email, so wow.
Ms. Hurst, thank you very much for the continuing work, and again, thank you to North Andover Music Association for all you do in district.
Thank you very much.
Great.
Thank you.
So I'll take a... Any other further conversation? And Mr. McDevitt, thank you as well. Good. So all in favor of accepting the donation from the North Andover Music Association in the amount, I got to say it one more time, in the amount of $25,683, say aye. Aye. All opposed, none abstained, 5-0, and again, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yeah, please. Okay, moving on to our next topic. This is the chair report. I have two things to report out today. The first, you may have noticed that a press release was issued by the town manager, Mr. Mailer. It turns, as was reported at last meeting, we were waiting for official report, but the town has had an increase in its global rating from S&P for the first time in town history. The town is at AAA bond rating, which is quite impressive. In addition, they upgraded the town's financial management assessment from good to strong, which there are very, very few in the Commonwealth that actually have that as part of their financial portfolio. So I just wanted to make clear that we did discuss this briefly last week, but now there's an official press release. This is, again, a very strong collaboration between the boards and in the strong fiscal management that we are under, and I think that this is really a telling story to both Mr. Mailer and Dr. Price, and the collaboration that we are looking forward to going into the coming years between the municipal and the school side. So I thought that was one thing I wanted to point out.
I would just echo, I don't think I can take any credit. I think it's really a tribute to Mr. Mailer. He's done an amazing job, and I think just wanted to push back a little there, Mr. Gross.
Well,
Maybe in a few years.
we will agree to agree. The other comment I wanted to make, there is a proposal to dissolve the town audit committee, and I just wanted to bring that up for this board to at least provide any feedback, given that the Board of Selectmen, I think, are going to discuss this at their meeting on the 6th, if I recall. And I know a few of us were around when the audit committee was created, and I think, Mr. Teresi, you're a current representative to that committee, so I'd like to be able to identify if there are any concerns that this board would have on the dissolving of that group, or if we think that that is a reasonable thing based on current financial state and where we are. So I'll yield time for Mr. Teresi and others.
Sure. I guess from my perspective, I think I missed the meeting, so that's why I pointed to the committee to start with. We only met a few times, and I think part of the problem was when it was originally created, there was a need for it. I must say in the last 18 months that I've been on the committee, it seems like it doesn't really have a real mission. So it seems to me that Mr. Miller's on the right track here, and the Board of Selectmen's desire to dissolve the committee. From my perspective, not that it wasn't useful at some point, but I think it has outlived its usefulness. I think there was a little bit of confusion about the mission with some of the members, and like I said, I think at the time it was created, it was probably needed, but at this point, I don't see that being the case.
Okay, thank you. Others?
Having served on it earlier, the purpose started out to be less fiscal audit than procedural audits. There was some issues that had been raised about town departments and town employees and how they were conducting the business, and so I think that was initially the focus of what the committee was, not a financial audit, although it did get into some of that a little bit. But I think now that that's all been taken care of, there's, I'm sure, no longer any need for that.
Okay. Good. Any other comments or any thoughts? Okay, so what I'll wind up doing is probably just sending an email to Mr.
Mailer.
Thank you. It's been a long day so far. Mr. Mailer, with feedback that we have no concerns or objections over the dissolving of that committee. And thank you for the time. Very good. That's all I have for the chair report.
I request that we pass by the superintendent's report, if that's okay. We have a number of guests here, and mine is quite lengthy, so if you wouldn't mind coming back, that would be great. Is that okay?
Yeah, that's very reasonable. So
Okay,
let's
thank you.
jump through, and maybe we should jump to 10D and hear our health report. Surprise act.
Dr. Chan's not here yet, so I'm not sure when he'll be here, but I can go ahead and do this. without-
We can also do the field trips if you would want to do that first.
Oh,
We can appoint Dr. Chan after, we can do this one.
Okay.
yeah.
All right, great.
So I have copies of this if you need it, or...
We have it.
We have it.
Okay. I'm going to start with number 2, the health services. The attendance study that was done statewide, if you remember last year, the state had all school nurses track the attendance for second graders only. And this year they asked us to track grades 1, 3, 7, and 9. And the top graph are the state results. We're part of the team, and so I have access to them. They're not complete yet, but this is some of the first initial information from the state. And then the second graph is the North Andover tracking. In the first month of September, we looked at the 30 days, and any student that was absent 3 or more days, we tracked, and they were our cohort. And then we tracked them for 3 other 30-day periods, but with some nursing interventions in between to try to reduce the absent rate. And so these are the results. In North Andover, we started with 119 in the September group, and by March, there were 13 students that we were continuing to track. I mean, I don't need to tell anyone here what the importance of attendance is and all the studies that show that. The second page shows why the students were absent. And the graph that says MBS, that's mental, behavioral health, and social and anxiety.
Mr. Chairman, I'm sorry. Could we ask just informational questions as we go along? Because I'm a little confused right off the bat.
Do you want to complete the report, and then we can circle back?
Well,
or-
it might just help me, just real
Fair
quick.
enough.
So are you saying that, so this blue line, these first graders, you identified approximately 32 kids, 32 first graders at the beginning of the year, and those same 32 kids, they were only, say, whatever, it's 5 or 6 at that point?
Only that group.
That group.
That's the only group
Okay.
we tracked.
That's what
Upon reflection, the nurses in our district, we tracked all of our students.
Right.
So although the state asked us to do this, it was easier for us. We have Power School, we have Alicia who helps us, track students. So we work with, the team. I mean, Lauren McDonald at the high school, every week they track, who's absent in the high school.
That's what I sure I was clear on that. Thank you very
Yeah.
much.
And Cheryl, can you quickly just say what folks did? You said they intervened, so just what does that mean?
So on this graph here about why they're absent, so with the mental, behavioral, and social anxiety health, I mean, when you intervene, this was I'm making phone calls to parents and working with the team. Guidance is involved, teachers are involved, everyone's involved in, decreasing the number of days that the students are absent. If it's an acute illness or a chronic illness, you work with the family on how you can have the students stay in school and not have to be out as much. And what we noted, I don't have a graph here for North Andover, but our 7th grade, mental, behavioral, and social anxiety, that was the number 1 reason that our 7th graders were absent at the end of the tracking period. So, again, we're working as a team, trying to get, introduce programs and help the students to be able to stay in school and not have these issues. Let's see. I'm going to move down to now health office visits, kind of the number 3. So can I have the nurses introduce themselves?
Yeah.
Sure.
We'll start with Mary.
Hi, I'm Mary Hadgen, Kittredge Elementary. Laura McDonald, High School. Betsy Marshall, Franklin School.
Kathleen Pease, middle school.
Barbara Hedstrom, Sargent School.
So this is who could be here. The other nurses couldn't get here tonight, but I don't have to tell people here that, they're a professional staff of nurses. Sometimes there's a stigma of, what do school nurses do, put on Band-Aids, but that's certainly not what school nurses do these days. So last year I talked a lot about the public health issues because we had norovirus and things like that. But this year, as I was looking through things, I noticed our 911 and EMS calls. Typically we have about 10 a year, but they're usually half students and half staff. And this year we had 9 students, and they were they were just really life-threatening, serious events this year. And like I was subbing at a school when one of them occurred, and so just reflecting on it, even though I've had lots of critical care experience, and all the nurses have as well, when you're involved, you are the only medical person in the building. And Kathleen Pease one day when we were reflecting after a call she had, said, you know, we have an AED and we have a first aid kit. We don't have doctors, we don't have other nurses, so it's just us in the building and the clinical decisions that we make. So I just want to point out that they really do a great job with clinical decision making. This year we also worked on medical emergency response plans, and we have a new fire chief and the EMS coordinator, Jeff Deshane. We all met together to kind of talk about all of the different events that happened this year and how we could work together and can we make any changes. So that was something I thought was worth noting tonight. So I just highlighted a few things in red. If you have other questions, I'd be happy to answer them. But the next red item was the number of office visits. We're up to almost 50,000 office visits this year. And I looked back at some of the presentations when I was here in 2013. I think it was a little bit earlier, so we didn't have the May numbers, but we were at about 37,000. I remember reflecting that that was about the number of seats at Fenway Park. So now we have Fenway Park plus the Boston Garden. So that's how the health office visits have been increasing with frequency. The next red number was medication management. I don't typically talk about this number, and my husband is also in the medical profession. Saw this number when I was putting this together and said, well, that's a lot of doses. And so I looked into it a little bit further, and 3,000 of those doses are psychotropic meds. And so it's not just Tylenol and Advil that we give, and they're seizure meds. And it's important, and again, I was subbing, and a student came in, and he came for his meds, and luckily the picture comes up, so I knew that I was giving it to the right person, and he knew what he was taking, didn't know the name, though. And I went and opened the med cabinet, double-locked, and there were 4 meds that he took, and I thought, oh, wow, now I got to go back. And so it's an involved process, and we have very rare do we have medication errors, but they can happen, and it's really important that they always have to pay attention, especially with students with diabetes. We have 15, and you have to have undivided attention when you work with those students. Let's see, I guess I'll go to the next page. And these are the procedures, treatments, assessments. And again, I highlighted some numbers that I thought were worth noting. And as we talked about before, the behavioral social situations that students have now, we're seeing more and more coping events and social skill support that are needed to keep kids in school. They really go to the nurse's office first. That's kind of the first door they go to when they have had something going on. And that's a comforting place. And then the nurse can work with guidance and the teachers and get programs going. Again, the 15 students with diabetes is blood glucose testing, and that number's high. Musculoskeletal assessment, that's your students that come with orthopedic injuries, PE, recess, athletics. And then ENT assessment, that's your ear, nose, and throat, earaches and sore throats. I'm sorry?
No.
And I had to mention under I, skin integrity assessment. So that's the number of Band-Aids we put on. But Betsy Marshall at Franklin pointed out to me when I was talking with her that those are for the big cuts, the big Band-Aids, because we give every teacher a bag full of Band-Aids. And for little ones, they do that in the classroom. So I just wanted to point that number out. And then the nutrition assessment, I think it's important to give a shout out to that food rescue program. I mean, all that we had in the nurses' offices were crackers, and now we can provide apples and oranges and carrot sticks, and they can all attest to the fact that kids really come to take them. I mean, it is huge success. The parent volunteers have done a tremendous job with that. On the next page, as you can imagine, with the number of times that nurses have to talk to parents. Any student that's being dismissed, the parent gets notified first. If there's any change in their medical condition, of course, we notify parents. Food allergies continue to rise. I'm not sure why that keeps happening. I know there's been a lot of studies now, and they're trying to introduce peanut products earlier so that children aren't as sensitive to them. And I was talking with Mary Hadgen, who happens to be, along with Linda Sullivan, the co-chair of the Asthma and Allergy Merrimack Valley Foundation. So she's kind of the expert in this area, said that a lot of tree nut allergies are coming out now and just some other allergies as well. Of note, our 911 calls, we did give 3 EpiPens this year. We recognized some teachers that were before school were able to provide to one student. And that was something we did different this year. Usually we, in the big auditorium, we pass around the EpiPens and have all the teachers practice. This year they did one-on-one training, and I think it was much more effective. I think the teachers are more comfortable because they actually had to show back the demonstration how to use it, and the high school teachers did a great job. Some of the mandated screenings, moving to number 9, I wanted to highlight the vision screening and the number of referrals.
Just on cue.
There we go. It's so important that children can be able to see, to read for all kinds. So it's early to pick them up. We do 1 through 5, and then grades 7 and 10 in elementary. You can, common sense why, they have to be able to see. And then in adolescent, in the 7th grade, there are actually 60 referrals, and so I read about it, say why there's so many referrals, and that's when there's growth in the axial diameter of the eye, and so there are changes that happen at 7th grade. And then Lauren at the high school said they probably do 10th grade because now they're going to get their driving license. So that's, the state picks the years, but we do the screenings. And number 10, I have the BMI letter, number 25.3%. It's under state average. I didn't do the breakdown this year. There were a few pocket areas in elementary, a few grades, a few classes, and we'll address those separately starting in the fall. Another role of the professional school nurse is, of course, health education. And all of these are things that we've been doing year after year. One that I put in red was something that Franklin Elementary School started this year. Betsy, along with her guidance, art, and music department, a stress and anxiety class to provide to them, again, to help with this whole social emotional. And then the last bullet, number 12, I just want to talk about a couple grants. We received on the first one, the SBIRT grant, and that's the screening and brief intervention that we're doing in high school. And we talked about that, Stan, at the Health Advisory Committee. We did get a small grant so that we would be able to implement this program in the middle school next year. And that bill was passed, the opioid bill. We have to start it in 2017 anyway, but we can go ahead and start this year because of the small grant we received. Per the recommendation of DPH, we did put Narcan in the schools this year. The high school nurse, Laura McDonald, as well as the athletic director and trainer, were invited to speak at a DPH conference about their best practice with concussion management, as they're noted in the state as being a great exemplar for that program. The police came and talked about ALICE training, which we'll be implementing starting in the fall. We had our family flu clinic with the health department, another success. Over 500 people in town were immunized, and we work closely with the health department for disease surveillance. We haven't had to do too much this year, luckily. We're on the Substance Abuse Community Task Force, and I mentioned the asthma and allergy support group. We do the Medicaid billing logs for reimbursement from the town, and we just found out on Tuesday we received one more grant. And I'm excited about this one. It's about $16,000, which will allow us to have about 80 days of sub-nurses. So Barbara Hedstrom and Laura McDonald can spend some time focusing on this school care coordination project for higher-risk populations. So these are this behavioral health, and they can go to trainings and bring programs back to the district and look at a particular group of students for attendance tracking and transitioning from elementary to middle to high, and how we can improve attendance for these students. So that's a great grant. And last, staffing, which I always have to bring up, is that we still don't meet state requirements, which are, or recommendations, 1 nurse per 500 students. But we have implemented some lean management principles, and with the help of Mr. Mealy, the grant that we have, the Essential School Health Grant, would probably fund maybe 1 nurse. But instead of doing that, we have 4 per diem nurses that are just work a daily rate so we can be more efficient with them. and have them, like on days we have to do screenings, we can put 3 nurses in one school on one day, and we can make sure that schools are safe different times of the year. We can put them in different places. So that's how we are flexible and efficient with our grant, since we can't hire more nurses right now. Dr. Chan, who will be appointed tonight, hopefully, he's a great resource. Just want to mention that. He writes our standing orders. He came to the meeting with the EMS because they have different protocols than in schools, and it was nice to have that collaboration to talk about that. And he's, we have his cell phone number if we have any concerns. He's happy to help us with that. Questions, comments?
So I have 2 quick questions. On number 9, number 8, you describe special needs, and looks like we have, I assume, a student with a ventilator. Is that new to district, or is that?
No, he's been in the district now. How long has he been in the district? 5 years. 5 years. But I just want to point that out because it's critical. I mean, a nurse rides the bus, and when that particular nurse isn't in, it's a challenge because not every nurse can be comfortable with that.
Right.
And it's just amazing to have so many healthcare needs in a school setting. I mean, it's great because everybody can stay in school, and that's our goal, to keep them there.
Absolutely. And the other question I had was, do you have a estimate of the total number of, or the total amount of the grants that we're getting between the SBIRT and the new Lean and Innovative School Care Coordination?
So the Essential School Health Grant is about $60,000 to North Andover, and that has to pay for a lot of different programs that we do. That takes care of our AED program and a lot of programs that we do, all of our screenings. It pays for the staff for that. And the SBIRT grant was $12,000, and this one's $16,000, the new one.
And
I asked for 25, but I only got 16.
88 so far.
And the Narcan schools, that's not granted, right? That's
No.
the operational cost of this.
No, but I used the Essential School Health Grant to pay for the Narcan.
Excellent.
And I think I asked, that's at every school, correct?
Every school has a dose of Narcan, and all the nurses are trained. And I know there's something that went out to school committees that you had to upgrade your policies.
Yeah.
Right.
That's only if you're going to have staff use it,
Right.
because then you have to train all your staff. Only the nurses are going to use Narcan in our buildings, and EMS, and they all know it's there.
Right, okay.
Yeah, but I mean, the rest of the data speaks for itself. I mean, the amount of work and the amount of life-saving that occurs in our schools because of you and your team is just it's unbelievable. And I'm really glad that we have such a good professional group of nurses available. Recognize that we'd like to have more. And I think the way you're approaching the lean management of the resources, that's also very well noted.
I was just going to say, the attendance stuff is stunning. As somebody who has worked in schools, to see an intervention impact attendance, which is something we just struggle with. The kids that you can never get to are the kids who don't come. And it's such a hard thing to tackle. So that's just stunning statewide and district-wide information.
One
and
thing
incredible.
to note on that is on that first chart last year, we looked at second graders, and the red bar are third graders. And we're hoping, I'm going to attend a meeting tomorrow to look at the data a little closer, but we're hoping that that's because of the interventions we did for those second graders.
That's going to be one of my questions.
Because we did send home a lot of education pieces to parents. There were a lot of phone calls to parents, why it's important. Don't have your vacations. How can we keep your kids in school? How can we manage things? So we're hoping that's why. Maybe as we keep trending, we can see that.
That was one of my things. I was fascinated between first grade and third grade. The huge changes across the board, state and local.
So I was glad to see that.
Yeah. Also, I was just curious, can you talk a little about the muscular skeletal assessment? I mean, that's a colossal number. So much bigger than the rest. I mean,
Who wants to talk about that?
that's just incredible.
Like the elementary football games at lunch.
Yeah, every school, so our students are in fitness and gym, and then there's lunch recess. So we've had orthopedic emergencies, dislocated joints, broken collarbones. I mean, I have a student with both a wrist fracture and an ankle fracture, so his mom's thrilled. Separate events and not freak accidents, which is why they call them accidents. But so we have true injuries, and then we have a lot of aches and pains. A lot of I woke up and now I have this, or I woke up 6 weeks ago and I still have this. A lot of I find there's a lot of primary care issues that come into the nurse's office, and you have to sort of work through the acute stuff, and a lot of them are the musculoskeletal. I hurt myself at football over the weekend, or...
Right, interesting.
I will say, just how appropriate this is, as coming from Franklin, where I feel like our gym is really inadequate for the number of kids that are in gym class. When you have double, classes in one enclosed space with a cement floor, it's pretty dangerous, actually. So, and the kids have a lot of energy. It's not that they're not supervised. We have beautiful new equipment on the playground. The injuries there, Cheryl asked me, have you had more injuries with your new high equipment?
Right.
Absolutely not, because I think we have rules now with the new structure. It's the inside the gym where it's just not enough space.
Interesting. Thank you.
That's an interesting point, but I'm just curious, Mrs. Hadgen, I mean, have you noticed that from Kittredge, obviously going from a Calvin Gymatorium to now a spacious gym that's
Cheryl was asking me that the other day, so I feel like more of my injuries are outdoor recess than in the gym.
Okay.
And of course, there's always,
We're going to change that next year.
Yeah.
New playground, right? So I'm going to learn about those rules.
Yeah.
Right.
But, but like Kathleen said, somebody can trip over their shoelaces in a well-supervised gym class and fracture their arm in gym. So it just, there's so many things that can happen. But I definitely feel that our gym has helped tremendously.
No, thank you. Very, very thorough report. I enjoyed hearing all it, and I, like Dr. Price, was very interested in this first page. This tracking is really impressive, and obviously the interventions are working, so kudos to all of you.
Thank you.
So I have a couple of quick questions, but is there any reason, I mean, the 7th grade numbers still seem to be, the highest number when we look at the, I think it was the second chart, Mr. Mealy, one up, if you, thank you. That is just really, in a bunch of the cases, it's really above and beyond, where the others are. I mean, why 7th grade? I'm just curious.
And we did find it was a lot of social and emotional
Seventh grade,
anxiety
that was the
issues.
top.
Is
In the
that-
first and
Numbers,
third, for our town. Statewide, it was a little bit different, but for our town, it was definitely anxiety. And it wasn't anyone that was surprising. You knew all of those students already being worked on with guidance with the team.
Right.
We can, hopefully with this grant next year, we can focus on that grade and see what's going on and see if we can do some things.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's a tough
Do you have
age.
a 7th grader?
Yes.
No, I have a 6th grader, but he likes to go see Mrs. P. So he gets counted
Regularly.
in here.
Quick.
Well, as long as
In
we
and
keep
out.
him in school, he wouldn't be counted. This is for
Okay, all right,
absence.
all right. Yeah, that's good. That's
The
good.
7th grade class is a big number.
Yeah, that's the other thing. Our
Number of
seventh,
students.
our 7th grade, as we did during the budget process, is the largest.
It is a large number, you're right.
So
And
that
this
is
just
the,
a count, it's not a percentage.
that's the grade the high school's going to get next year that we're going to talk about in budget process. It's a big grade.
And the age, too, like you said,
Yes.
Gillian. I mean,
Friendships and all
who
that.
wants to be 13? I'm staying home from school.
So when you reflect on the data, did you look at things like, is the gym at particular elementary schools more prone than...
Well, that's why I went around and asked everybody, what they were seeing, just so I could have that for the report tonight. And like they said, it's kind of mixed.
I think it would be helpful in the report to identify where there's perceived or where there are significant hotspots that you may need to take action. That'd be helpful.
Okay.
But this is very good. Thank you.
Can I ask you a couple more questions real quick, if you don't mind? In terms of equipment that you have and have available to you, I mean, it's a really dumb question. I don't know the answer to it. But, I mean, in part, do you have what you need? And then the second, is some of that coming to us from state grants? Is that coming out of our regular budget in terms of just supplies for that? Or is that reimbursable through any Medicaid, any of that?
So Cheryl can answer this, but I do,
Okay.
having talked about it, I can tell you our line item for nursing within our budget is very small. I think it's $5,000.
Small.
For
I
supplies.
buy most of the.
Out of the
supplies
grant.
I do buy, anything disposable I have to get from the district. But equipment, I can use that nice essential school health grant.
Okay.
That buys AEDs, blood pressure monitors, pulse oximeters. We have that equipment.
Okay.
That's renewable?
That grant, I have another year,
One more year.
and then we'll have to reapply again, and hopefully the new governor will enjoy
We'll
that
fund it.
grant and keep it. And right
Okay.
now, it's funded for next year, we just got that
Okay. So,
message, which is great.
so even though we've got this $5,000 grant that's there, I mean, do you have?
$50,000 grant.
I'm sorry.
That's the 50, or actually
50, yeah.
62,000.
Yeah. Do you still have what you need from a medical perspective?
Oh, I'd like more staff from a medical perspective.
That's my next question, but,
Yes.
okay.
No, because that's the thing, there's no one else to run something by, to have another person there. If there's an emergency, the rest of the students just have to go back to class.
Okay.
Because there's not another nurse in the building.
You're essentially leaving, you have to leave the office to go tend to where the emergency
You get
is.
called to
Sure.
the classroom and I lock the door and tell the secretary I have the walkie-talkie, but I'm in the field with a wheelchair. So if my student with diabetes comes back, please call me and I'll come fast. But
Right.
I'm doing two important things at the same time.
Okay. Obviously, the recommendation, I guess, is one nurse per 500 students, but have we looked at anything from when the students are coming to the nurse to say, and I'm just making this up, first hour of the day, like we could actually use somebody else who's here on a per diem, not really a per diem, but a per
So that's what we do
hour.
with this grant, and that's what I meant about using them like as they're needed. So
Okay.
with the program we have at the health office, it's our electronic health system. The time the student comes in is noted.
Yep.
And I have looked at that. In mornings, some schools are busier, some schools are busy in the afternoons. Depends on what you have going on in your school. So we do track that. I presented that one year. I didn't this year.
Okay. And does it ever get reported back to the parents? So, like, Mrs. Pease, Kathleen and I are friends outside of here, and I know, she said, oh, I saw, Matt or, something. And I'm like, you send him right back to class. He does not need to be bothering you. But if I knew that he were in there, like 3 times a week or whatever it is, I mean, there'd be a very different conversation because he doesn't need to take up your time. But is that
So one
something
of the
that you
goals is to
communicate back to
get the
parents?
students back to class as soon as possible. That's everyone's goal. That's what we all work on. That's what you want to return the students to class. And I mean, our return to class rate's 95%, and we've been maintaining that for many, many years. Get students back to class quickly. Now, if someone was there 3 times, I'm sure you'd work a plan out.
We identify students that are frequent flyers.
And you notify the parents like they're coming in a lot, okay.
Absolutely.
With the teacher, with the parent, with guidance, why is this happening? Is there something underneath that we need to look more deeply into to figure out what's going on and why are they there?
Okay. And then I know with the food kind of rescue programs that the students are coming in for, whether it's snacks or just things that they can take home.
So with the food rescue, for example, in Atkinson, the numbers were really high. We're taking that out of the nurse at Atkinson. And so
Okay.
it's in the hallway, and that's so successful. I mean, they have one on the 2nd floor as well as the 1st floor. And the students go right to that food, and that's run by Erica's program. She has a person at Atkinson that is helping them. So there are definitely less visits to the Atkinson office for nutrition snacks.
Okay.
Some of the other offices, like I know at the high school, Lauren has a basket with the fruit in it, and the kids come in. At the middle school, the same thing. So it's not taking away as much time because it's right there and they just take it.
Okay. And are they also coming in for, because they don't have winter coats and they're cold, or is that also?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, I know, again, I was at Atkinson one day and some girl didn't, her clothes were not appropriate, didn't have anything else, and she said, oh, I'll go to my stash, and she gave her clothes, and on she went. It was great.
Okay.
I know Thompson, she has the same thing.
Yeah.
They're unbelievable at the schools in terms of knowing who has what needs. The schools that run the coat drives, oftentimes the nurses, before we donate the coats,
That's exactly
figure out
right. I
what
was just gonna
coats
say
we
that.
need at the actual school. You have these North Face jackets and things coming in. You have kids at the school, and they do a tremendous job.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right, excellent. Thank you very much.
Well done.
Thank you very much.
I think we have to do the wellness policy, or does that come later?
Oh, it's a first reading first call. Do you want, while you're here, you want to walk us through the changes that you see indicated?
That was a sly move.
Yes, did it again.
There you go.
Yeah.
So we're on to the first reading of the annual health policies. This is 11A.
So the only change, and Mr. Limpert was at that meeting, if you scroll down, Erica Murphy, the vending machines during school hours only include water. The policy used to say they included what's there. So that was one change. And the second change is also minor, and that was Jen Flynn noted later that the curriculum followed national standards, including Massachusetts. It used to only say Massachusetts curriculum framework. And those are the only changes to the wellness policy. And the concussion policy and the emergency medical policy aren't due to be reviewed this year.
Right. Okay. So again, being the first reading, we'll take action on that at our next meeting, unless there's specific questions that the committee would like to ask at this point.
And does Dr. Chan need to be here to be reappointed?
No.
Okay.
No. I'm sure those of us who know him have met him before. Great. Actually, before we go, I'm assuming if we get to that before he arrives, can you just describe the collaboration you have with him in terms of what type of interactions beyond policy or medical referral?
So first thing is he writes our orders for us so that he, oh, God, second there, sorry. So in August, he writes our medical orders for all of our standing orders, for example, to be able to give Tylenol or Advil or things like that, as well as he approves our first aid policies to make sure that we're current, all evidence-based, and anything new, we've made those changes. So that's the first thing he does at the beginning of the school year. He comes to our health advisory committee meetings, and he also attends usually 2 or 3 nursing staffing meetings per year. And this year, because of the EMS meeting, he came to that one as well. And then he's available by phone whenever we call him. There might be a family situation coming up that I'm probably going to pull him in. He will make phone calls to other physicians as well on our behalf because he has those relationships. Anything else, Dr. Chan?
Just consultations.
Yes.
Yeah.
You call him a lot?
Yeah, run things by him.
This year in particular.
How long has he been our school physician for?
Since I can remember, more than 10 years.
Yeah.
And his rate has never changed. I know he brought that up last year.
Yes.
He still does it. He's also the school physician for Andover.
Not selling point?
No, I think I collaborate with that lead nurse as well, and so it's nice that he can use, like, sometimes our policies, do you mind if I use that, to their school committee, and it helps him to understand, because we all have to follow the same DPH guidelines and regulations.
Sounds like you could do that once and copy it around Massachusetts. So access is unfettered, you're getting what you need.
He's great.
Great. Okay, excellent. Thank you. Thank you very much. That's the first read too as well, correct? So unless there are any other questions from the committee, I think we can move on. Maybe we want to, while we're still on new business, tackle our field trips, if that would be okay.
I was just looking at thinking.
I know this constitutes a majority of the paper this evening.
Yes, it does.
Thank you very much.
You guys don't need to wait for Dr. Chan, so.
I'm curious about these field trips.
Oh, okay, well, no.
That's something that nurses do not love.
Hi, Dr.
So,
Scazzarella.
good evening. Our field trips have been, our overnight trips have been so successful, we have more to come before you yet. So, the first 3 are our general, regular foreign exchange trips. All of them have been in place for a number of years. The German trip is over 30. The Spanish trip is 6, and we've been going to France for more than 12 years, but we have switched communities that we exchange with. We now go to Brignoles, which is in the southeast of France, and it was very, very successful. They really were in this small town where no one spoke any English. So they did well. It was a good trip. But before I get to that, I just want to add my thanks to the NAMA group for their continued support of all of our music programs at the high school. I know I speak for Sarah and Justin in saying a huge thank you, because they've enabled our students to really excel, and they've provided support for many, many, many years prior to when we had it back in our budget. So they've been great. And I also want to thank, if you saw the tweet that went out today, the NAHS Parent Advisory Committee had donated some money to me 2 years ago to put towards a podium, and we finally have a new podium. It arrived yesterday, and it's on our stage, getting ready for rehearsal tomorrow. So we're very excited to have a podium that's not scratched, banged, things hanging off it. It'll look really good for graduation next week, so we're excited about that. So anyway, back to the trips. So the first 3 are just, if you have any questions at all on France, Germany, or Spain, I'm happy to answer. Let's see, 2 are going in April, and the vacation week is included in both of those trips. One is going a week before, one will be a week after. So they usually go for 2 weeks. That's France and Germany, I'm sorry. Spain is going to go again in February. That was successful, and it did enable a lot of students who have struggled with missing spring sports or spring music performances. It didn't interfere, because the Spanish trip is our largest amount of students that goes. It's anywhere from 25 to 30. And having it in February was really good. It was kind of the tail end of the winter athletic season and a little bit before the music and drama presentations get going in the spring. So they would like to go again in February and into early March. And again, that's through the February vacation as well. We'd like to repeat the Dominican service trip. Very, very successful. For many of our students, I think a life-changing experience. I know for the teachers it was. They would like to go again, and that trip also went over February vacation, so the students, I don't believe, miss any school days, because that takes place all during that vacation. The trip to Peru is an invitation through the group that we worked with in the Dominican Republic, the Mariposa Foundation, and this will be for no more than 11 of our students who participated on that service trip this year. So rather than having them repeat the trip and then limiting the newbies to be going to do a service trip. These students were invited to participate in this Global Student Leadership Conference, which will go March 11th to the 20th with your permission. There are 500 students from all over the world. They will hear world-class speakers, and we gave a couple of examples there. In the past, they've had Jane Goodall, Sir Ken Robinson, and Al Gore have been some of the featured speakers at this. They will also do a service project while they're in Peru, but they will be attending primarily this conference also and getting this experience and really becoming global citizens, which is a lot of what they came back with. Some of these students are very active now in volunteering in Lawrence, in the Dominican community there. I mean, they came back really wanting to make a difference, so this just allows them to further that on a global scale. And then we have some that will stay within the United States. You know from our last meeting that the music program and you heard it again tonight, very successfully competed in Virginia. All of our performance groups earned gold medals, which earned our entire program an invitation to the Festival of Gold, which is all the gold medal winning programs. A couple of years ago, in 2013, the Scarlet and Black Singers were invited to Festival of Gold. I went with them to San Francisco. It was an amazing experience for the kids to participate at this high level with all of these high-level performers from all around. And they also get to work with some world-class clinicians who help them perfect their craft. And one of the venues they performed in was a church in San Francisco, and it really brought you to tears because the music was amazing, and the venue and what they were singing, and it was spectacular. It was better than when I saw them at Carnegie Hall, and that was pretty exciting to watch my kids perform at Carnegie Hall in New York the first time they were invited. So they originally, when they were here last month, they were talking about going to Washington, D.C., and then when they got the price for the trip, it was reasonable to go to Los Angeles. They would like permission to go to Los Angeles because it gets them, they compete on the East Coast regularly at these festivals they go to, and it would give them an opportunity to compete with some different groups and work with some different clinicians from the other part of the country. Also, for some of our students, this will maybe be one of the only times they get to go to the West Coast and see some of the sites there besides performing out there. So they are asking to be able to take that trip. You've got the details there. They will miss 3 school days, I believe, because it's a Friday over the weekend, then Monday, Tuesday, because they're going to Los Angeles with permission. And so that's why they ended up choosing Los Angeles. They will have to take 3 flights. They've got that all ready to go. They can't all go on the same plane, nor do we want them probably all on the same plane. That would be bad for the other passengers.
As a frequent flyer, thank you.
I've been on some of those flights too. That's a lot of teenagers. So they'll have 3 different flights. They'll all arrive, within half an hour, 45 minutes of each other. And then while they're there, they'll have buses to transport them, or they'll be walking to different venues. So all that information is there for you.
I thought you meant 3 connections.
Oh, no.
Getting 220 kids through 3 connections.
Oh, no, this is nonstop.
It's been done.
They're not getting off those planes.
220 coming out the other end.
Yeah.
R220.
If you miss 2 or 3, you're still an A+.
American Thought, our junior interdisciplinary English social studies class, every couple of years they ask permission to take the students to Washington, D.C. So I think we last went 3 years ago. They are asking permission to go March 7th to the 9th. They are going to do, it fits in real, actually, it's not just American Thought this time, it's AP US History also is interested, so it could be over 100 students involved in going on this trip. They will take buses from North Andover High School, and they will see everything they can possibly see in 3 very full days. It fits nicely with our curriculum. Yes, Andy?
Sorry, can I just they're literally going to be on a bus for 2 of those days, pretty much. And the places that they're seeing is just, that's a huge list.
If I remember correctly, the bus leaves at like 3 a.m.
It's overnight.
Okay.
And so they arrive in Washington, about 10-ish, 11. And they're busy all day, part of the night, all the whole next day, and then they have a pretty full day, and then they're back on the bus and back in North Andover.
Keeping teenagers busy on field trips
is
a very well-honed high school technique.
Yeah, we want when they go in their rooms to go to sleep.
And they still don't.
And they don't. Yeah, they're too excited.
It's better when they're aggregated in a small space.
Yeah. So you've got all the information there for that trip. It's a it's a wonderful opportunity anytime we can take our students to the nation's capital and have them see all of the memorials and the museums and sites there, because it does connect directly to what they talk about and study in class. And the last trip you have in front of you, Model UN's getting a little overconfident, to say, and they want to journey out of state. So at first, you remember we started at UMass Lowell, then we went into Boston to BC, then they decided they wanted to go to a bigger conference at Harvard, and so now they want to go to one where they'll meet people from other states and really have an opportunity to show what they can do. So they're asking to go to the College of William and Mary in Williamsburg, Virginia, to compete over Veterans Day. So they will miss 2 days of school, because I think there's a weekend in there. I think Veterans Day is a Friday or Monday?
It's a Friday.
Yeah, so they'll go Thursday to Monday. They will be also on buses, and they it's not a huge amount of students, it's about 20. But they are excited to ask permission to journey into Virginia and see the College of William and Mary, and also Williamsburg is, you can walk off the college campus and you're in Colonial Williamsburg. So they'll have that option. They'll also be, my son went there, this is why I know all this, they'll be able to go to Jamestown and Yorktown also. So things that, they'll have learned about in U.S. history will also come to life for them in person.
So on that point, looks like it says no chaperones, Mr. Mayette, and 20 students. Is that right?
No parents. It'll probably be, there's a TBD there. There'll be one other chaperone probably besides Mr. Mayette. I just don't know who it is.
I see.
None of these trips, well, I shouldn't say that. The music trip will have parents.
Yes,
many,
lots of them.
Many
Yes.
parents, because we don't have enough teachers to go on that trip. But all of the other trips are generally our own staff, no outsiders. And NAMA is wonderful at making sure everybody's quarried and good to go, and they've been great on all of our music trips. One thing I will mention with music, this is unusual for us to take a huge trip like this 2 years in a row. I did make sure I mentioned that in the paperwork, in the notes at the end. So what it means is we will not be taking a trip the following year, a big trip of any sort for music, because typically we go every other year. That's the way we've worked it for the last 9 years. It gives parents a break, and it enables our students to have 2 opportunities if they want to participate in trips while they're in our music program in high school. So this will still, some kids will get a third opportunity with this trip. The seniors will be getting a third opportunity, but everybody else will get back in that flow of 2 opportunities while they're at North Andover High School to participate in these trips.
How many students went to San Francisco last year?
It was Scarlet and Black Singers in 2013, so it was 25. That's 25 to 30. That's a very small select group. This will be the concert band, the symphonic, the wind ensemble, the big chorus of 150, plus the Scarlet and Black Singers. So it's 220 to, I think they were estimating 220 because some kids won't go. They have other obligations and things like, or they might want to go on one of the
That's
exchanges.
a reduced number?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, the chorus is 160 all by themselves. Very, very impressive.
And about both that trip and the Washington, D.C. trip, just very challenging logistics, I think, with that number of students.
Yeah.
And all the chaperones and all the stuff that goes with it,
Yeah, I think that's one of the reasons, why you have so many chaperones, and the fact that it's this big of a trip. That's, I think, one of the reasons they wanted to lean towards Los Angeles, too, for taking this many kids. We want to really have them have an opportunity to see some things. And a lot of them have been to, we went to Washington recently to perform, and so it's a nice opportunity, if you are okay with it, for them to go to the West Coast.
Good opportunity for them to learn how to time travel. That's going to be interesting.
And manage their jet lag and all
Indeed.
of that, and still come back to school ready to go.
So just one comment from me. I believe these trips can be transformational for kids, and so educationally, from my perspective, I don't care much about time. I did not say anything inappropriate. I was going to say I would not do that.
I was wondering if
but I would just say educationally, I know that people always say, "Oh, kids are going to miss school," and I just feel like the opportunities these kids will have. They get 13 years of us, 180 days. If they're going to miss a few, it's okay with me. And I just see these as, good schools and good school systems have these opportunities for our kids. And I think educationally, I'm just so supportive of these. And I think seeing the kids who came back from the Dominican Republic demonstrated that to us. Right. So I just want to say from the educational perspective, I understand they may miss some school, but you know what? We get them for 177 other days or 175 other days. And these can be just transformational experiences, whether domestic or international. So just from my perspective, these are some of the best things schools do for our kids, is to give them a different lens than they get on a daily basis with North Andover.
Yeah. I agree. I've been on 2 of the exchanges while I've been here in North Andover, and I always find it a life-changing experience to live in someone's home and experience the culture close up. And I know you've done it also. It is amazing. And for our students to practice their language skills, to see that in other countries students face the same challenges that they think they're the only ones until they step into someone else's home and school and say, they're not so different. And it really, and I know you heard from the kids who went to the Dominican Republic. I know that those students were that was a very impressive trip for them, because they came back and wanted to continue the work that they were doing. And I think you remember hearing that night that they were fundraising to be able to provide some sort of a stove for one of the families that they were really interacting with. And it's a great opportunity we can give our kids. It's not required, and we try to make sure that parents understand that. We're not requiring kids to go on any of these trips. They are optional. And I know, money, that the Peru trip is very expensive.
Yeah, I was going to comment on that.
You saw that. That's very expensive. Because that's a different kind of a program. I know Christy Morley, you met Christy. Christy is all involved in trying to do some bigger fundraising that we could establish. She's been working very closely with Dr. Price to try to establish a foundation where we would have some money available to support and help students who want to participate in these but are a little bit pressed. Because if you do, Kim Hurst would tell you, 2 years in a row, Terry's gone to the robotics and then left there and gone to the music trip. And last year, he joined us in Munich, in Germany. So he was on a plane 3 different times. They sang at Carnegie Hall. He went to the robotics trip, and then he joined us in Germany and finished up pretty much April that way. So it's challenging, but I totally support it. I've been a big proponent of keeping our exchanges alive. I think they're really valuable, and taking kids to Washington, D.C., taking kids to perform in a venue they're never going to perform in Los Angeles, San Francisco, Carnegie Hall, are all really wonderful experiences. At last week's spring concert, I want to say about 30 alumni from the chorus came back and performed the last song with the regular chorus, and they had written little blurbs in the program of what they were doing now, and because they came from 05 and on, and they actually, or 09 rather, and on, a lot of them said the San Francisco trip, performing in San Francisco or performing at Carnegie Hall, was a highlight they'll never forget.
Yeah, I can definitely attest to the foreign exchange programs. Certainly one of my kids was able to attend in Germany, and he's currently spending a year abroad working and studying in German. So it definitely is a life changer, there's no question. And having been a chaperone to some of those, shall we say, long bus rides, you really get to see the best of North Andover, not only compared to the other student populations that attend these from time to time, but just the amount of proud behaviors that we see in our own students is just, it's just amazing. So I thank you very much for providing us the structured detail as well. Please.
Thank you. I generally agree with the sentiments that you raise, and you too, Dr. Price, that these trips definitely have value, and I know that some of them are like locked into these dates, like this leadership conference in Peru. I'm sure those are the only dates you can go with the Festival of Gold. The one that concerns me is the one to D.C. And I kind of agree with Mr. McDowell with that. I think you're jamming a lot into those 3 days with 8 hours of travel both ways. But this takes place on a Tuesday to Thursday, and it doesn't seem, at least from this information we have, that there's a reason why you're going those specific days. I don't know if you have any other information why these days are important.
My only guess from being in Washington, and I think some of the things are not open on Mondays and Fridays. You can't get into Congress on a Friday. You can't go into the Supreme Court. Well, I'm not going to say they don't work. But there's time, you can't do the White House certain times anymore. You know, there are a few more restrictions. That's my only guess. I'm happy to go back and ask those questions.
Well, this is the first reading, so I think that'd be helpful from my perspective.
Sure.
And why not maybe during school vacation week?
Sure.
Is that because it's too crowded, or?
It might be that it's too crowded during the vacation weeks, but I will certainly ask those questions for you.
Thank you.
Any other comments or questions?
I just want to say I really appreciate kind of seeing them all together, you know, and I know it put you on stage for, you know, a little bit of time here, but, you know, it kind of gets it done. Now they're able to, you know, book flights as appropriate and accordingly with that. And, you know, I think when we saw it, even this past year in kind of pieces, you don't really comprehend all of the trips that they're doing. And so this is really just, you know, again, a fantastic just kind of listing of kind of what's out there. So.
And you are remembering you gave permission for our kids to go to Yellowstone also. We've got a group going to Wyoming in the summer, who I think Mr. Anderson is already thinking about next year and what he'd like to plan. So I'm sure it may not be me, but someone will be back in front of you early in the year with that trip, because again, booking the flights and you just get better prices. But this was good that everybody, I kind of put the word out and said, you know, I'd like to bring the overnight trips to the school committee before the end of the school year, and I actually just put one in yesterday so that it would be here, and got everything in for you. So I'm happy you're happy with that.
It looks like late February, early March, the halls will be empty. So.
Cordic and Park.
Yes. My only concern, Dr. Scozzarella, just is these two trips and the size, right? That's all. You know, it's just, they're so big. I mean, you know, I'm used to the sort of the German and French kind of thing.
Yeah,
you know,
the 12 kids going.
12 kids or something.
Yeah.
And that's the only thing that, you know, it's just a little.
Well, the music, you approve the music trip every other year, and that's how big it is.
Yeah.
They're just not flying to California, but, you know, they're well chaperoned. They are well, we've never had a problem in the 9 years I've been here on our big trips. I have to say, I've never gotten that call, that there was even a delay of a bus or anything. So we've been very lucky and fortunate, but it's well organized and well managed, and there are plenty of chaperones. It is a lot of travel, but, you know, they're teenagers. I think the adults are more wiped out than the kids are. Mr. Gross could probably attest to
I can
that.
attest to that for sure.
I would also like to thank you, Dr. Scozzarella, for using our new form, and I appreciate, it's nice to just have it consistent actually across the trips, and I think the questions that people have and care about were on here, and I know it was extra effort, so I do really
No problem,
appreciate
and Bev and I are actually, it didn't allow me to put foreign countries in, and hotels, so there's a little tweaking we have to do with that. So some of the hotels are, I tried to put TBD, because we don't know, and it wouldn't allow that. So Bev and I are talking, but it's nice to have an electronic form, and it makes it simple.
You know, you're doing it.
Great. Great. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Okay. So.
That's awesome.
It's quite a list. Quite a list. Shall we jump to superintendent's report now?
Yes, if you, that would be great. The first thing I'd like to do is, Scott Young is here. He just came from a girls lacrosse game. Did they win?
We did win.
That's
All right.
exciting.
Excellent.
Baseball?
Baseball won, boys tennis won.
Good day.
Girls tennis did not, but they had a great year.
Oh,
All
great.
right.
So Scott's going to come, we normally recognize students and captains, and in lieu of that, Scott was actually just going to come and talk a little bit about the year of athletics at North Andover High School. Thank you very much for coming.
Hi, everybody.
Hello.
We've had, again, a great year. Nearly all of our programs had winning records, advanced to the postseason. I think you have this, but I'm not going to read to you, but I'll highlight some things. Did you guys get that?
I'm not sure we have that.
Okay, then I'll get you this.
Please read.
I'll have to read to you. So what I did is I did an overview of each season, fall, winter, and spring is still going, so you'll get that later. In the fall, we had an 81, 46, and 7 record, 60.4% winning percentage. It's going to land us somewhere in the top 10 in Division II in the state at the end of the year. Boys soccer, Coach Kyle Wood led them again to the Division II North quarterfinals. They finished 15-4-1. And kind of one of his prouder moments, one of the things he said postseason was, every coach we played talked about what good sports our kids were, which he spent a lot of time with kids. Like, that's something that he worked hard on, and it's worth mentioning. The cheerleaders were the Ipswich Invite champions. They qualified for regionals and states. They had a great young team and represented us well and cheered at football during the fall. Field hockey had one of our best teams in a long time. They finished 15-4-1. They advanced to the Division I North quarters. They had 2 Eastern Mass Best of 60 All-Stars, Danielle McAdams and Emma Johns. They had a Moynihan Lumber Student Athlete of the Month in Emma Johns. And they had an All-American. Lexi Davidson was a second-team Harrow Sports All-American. And they have a lot of talent coming back. Football, first-year head coach, John Dubzinski, qualified for the playoffs. They finished 6-5, and a lot of us were there to witness. They played their first game in a long time against Andover on Thanksgiving, and it was really good except for the very last second. Cross country, Rick Delakai again led his biggest team in recent memory. They finished 3-7, both the boys and the girls, but they featured the Division II MVC Runner of the Year, Lily Voke. Was undefeated during the regular season, just a great runner, and that's one thing that Coach Delakai does really well. All his kids love running. I don't know how. But even if you talk to kids that have graduated, they talk about how he really instills that love of running in them. I lost my spot. Girls soccer finished 8-7-4, qualified for the MIAA tournament. They lost in the first round in a 1-0 game to a really talented team. They had two Eastern Mass All-Stars, Abby Corrales and Mary O'Connor. Abby Corrales was first-team All-State, and Mary was second-team All-State. Swim and dive finished 4-7. First-year head coach Joe Rattay did a nice job and really kind of got the kids ready for postseason. They surprised everybody. They won the MVC Division II championships, and they had the Division II Swimmer of the Year in Sydney Sow. So he really, they really progressed throughout the season and obviously peaked at the right time. Girls volleyball was 15-4. Qualified for the MIAA tournament, lost in the first round. They won the MVC Sportsmanship Award. They had a Boston Globe and a Boston Herald All-Scholastic in Jillian Boyle. They also have a, Catherine Flaherty is going on to play at Merrimack College on a partial athletic scholarship. Golf, again, 12-1-1. They were MVC champs for 4th year in a row. Might be 5, but I'm struggling under pressure. They were Division II North champs. They were state runners-up out in Western Mass. Liam McAvoy was the MVC Open champion over at Vespa Country Club. They take all the top 2 golfers from each team in the league, and they play a true tournament-style day, and he came out the champion. And Jack Kelly was a Boston Globe All-Scholastic. That was our fall. Basketball, the boys had a little rebuilding year. They finished 5-15. They had lots of highlights during the year, including an upset over Lowell. Alex Romano won the Christmas tournament. What's it really called? The Commonwealth Classic scholarship. And what's really interesting is the owner of Commonwealth Motors came up afterwards, found me, and said, "That's really a polite young man, and Alex, he's the only guy that won a scholarship and went out of his way to write a thank you the next day." And that's the kind of kids that we have in all our programs, but that's a testament to Coach Tanglis and his whole staff. They really do build kids. Boys hockey returned to the state tournament for the first time in 5 years, 12-9-2. Little theme here. Eric Hall won the MVC DCL Bruins Sportsmanship Award. He got a night at the Fleet Center, the Garden. He had to go down on the ice, and they took his picture. It was a nice award for a great senior. This boys skiing finished 9-3 in the North Shore Ski League. The girls ski team finished 10-0. They were ski league champs, and they won the all-scholastic race as well. That's back-to-back for the girls on the league championships. Boys swim and dive finished 3-5. Girls basketball finished 11-10. They qualified for the MIAA tournament, and they were the IBO tournament champions, a little invitational tournament we hosted in February. Indoor track, the girls finished 1-4. The boys indoor track finished 2-3, but again, they were big meet performers. They were the Division II state relay champions, so that's the relay meet where all the events are run as relays, and it kind of shows team depth and team unity, and they were the state champs. And that's back-to-back for those guys. Gymnastics was 5-4. Dr. Scazzarella had a hand in the coaching this year. It was kind of exciting. The wrestling team finished 12-12-1. They featured a Division II North Sectional champion in Matt Messina. And that was our winter. We finished a record of 70-65-3 over the winter. The spring is still going, thankfully, but just some early highlights. We were league champs in baseball and girls lacrosse. We qualified for the tournament in baseball, girls lacrosse, girls tennis, boys tennis. We know so far that our boys tennis coach, Paul Burgesson, was named MVC Coach of the Year. We also know that our baseball coach, Todd Doolin, was Coach of the Year. We had a senior baseball player named Player of the Year, Brandon Parasotto. We don't have all the honors from the other programs. The other thing I should mention is that we started boys volleyball this year, the first year program. Coach Giuliano Pizzo really generated some excitement around it. Kids are excited. They struggled a little. It's their first year. But they jumped right in, played varsity, and they competed. They were in every game. They finished 1-19, but they really did compete and develop through, and there's a lot of excitement around that. So that's spring sports. We don't need any flights. We're not going anywhere.
Scott, just you might want to mention Eric Duffy this weekend.
Oh.
No.
Outdoor track.
Eric.
Outdoor track has a pole vaulter in Eric Duffy. He's a junior. He just set the state record in the pole vault. He cleared 16
and a half
feet, half inch. They call it 16 and a half, but I was told it wasn't 6, I guess. It's unlike anything you've ever seen. If you get a chance to go watch this kid, he'll be here next year as a senior. It's a different sport altogether when you watch somebody that can do it at that level. The whole meet stops. Went over to the state meet and the MVC meet. Everybody stops what they're doing, and if you've been to a track meet, it's like a circus. Everything's going on all at once. Half the kids are done vaulting by the time he enters the competition. He doesn't start till 14 feet, and like you're pretty good if you clear 12. But the whole meet stops. They go over and they watch him, and it's just unreal. He's going to get a lot of honors. He doesn't have them yet because he's still going. He'll be at the All-State meet this weekend. He's also a state champ, a divisional state champ in the 110 hurdles. You caught me on that. I printed this before all that happened.
It's why Twitter is so wonderful.
Yeah.
It's the teamwork.
Especially the Vine.
The Vine.
And to watch him do it.
Instagram.
It's awesome.
Yeah.
Impressive.
Incredible. Thank
Yeah.
you.
Quick question, how many students are in the volleyball, boys volleyball this year?
The boys had 12.
12, okay. That's a good size.
And they won one. That's exciting.
Yes, they won late in the year, and they had a chance. I mean, they were in matches. I mean, they really did compete.
That's great.
So.
That's awesome.
Great, any other comments or questions?
I was just going to say, I think it's great to have a new sport kind of start at the high school. So, obviously they had an interest, and we were able to, find a coach and support them with that. And so that's great. Thank you.
And to be honest, it's been a persistent interest, so I want to thank you for finding room in the curriculum this year, or in the programming this year for that. That's
It was Mr. Mealy's budgetary magic.
Here, here.
Thanks, Scott.
Great.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
The next part of my superintendent's report, I'm actually going to turn over to Mr. Gilligan.
Great.
Is he on the clock?
Yes, he
Watch
is.
the clock.
With his new glasses.
Yeah. I just found out about a week ago I have a hard time seeing print, so I've started with the CVS 1.0s.
Yeah, the arms get longer with age, Mr.
Yeah. I'd like to talk to you tonight about the kindergarten accreditation process and some information that we've just received recently. So the kindergarten accreditation, if you guys can remember, we got fully accredited by the NAEYC about 5 years ago, and every 5 years there's a accreditation update. And this past school year, all 5 of our schools, kindergartens, went through the reaccreditation process, which it started in August with professional development. And I have to say that Dr. Rogers and her team of kindergarten staff across the entire district really did a tremendous job coordinating, collaborating, and using the PD time to not only do what's best for kids, but to prepare for this reaccreditation. And it primarily consisted of, on the reaccreditation, is the program portfolios for each school are updated. It was a huge task, if you can remember, 5 years ago, that initial accreditation, and this was more of an update. And another big component of it was the teacher and family surveys were distributed and calculated, percentage received for each kindergarten, and that's important to note as we move forward. So they visited all schools in January of the past year for the reaccreditation. They visited Thompson, Sargent, and Kittredge, Atkinson in February, and Franklin in March. During these visits, the validator looked at 50% classroom portfolios, program portfolios, and parent and teacher surveys, and they observed about half of our kindergarten classes across the district and at each school. The accreditation is based on 10 standards that I'm not going to go through the long list at this point, but I can certainly provide them for you if you need it. So we had the reaccreditation results and outcomes. We found out recently that Atkinson, Franklin, Sargent, and Thompson School were reaccredited for 5 more years. We got a notice that Kittredge was deferred for one specific reason. They were deferred for not meeting the threshold score in family relationships. One of the things when you belong to, whether it's NEASC or whether you belong to, especially the NAEYC, the National Association for Education of Young Children, with this particular accrediting group, they point to one of the standards that you didn't make the relationship, you didn't make the threshold, but they don't necessarily point out that this was wrong or this was right. They said that it wouldn't meet it here. And when we found this out, we appealed the deferral decision because we believe that at the time maybe there may have been discrepancies with the validator himself who was through. And we just found out recently, and that's why we're talking about it tonight, that our appeal for Kittredge was denied, and the Quality Assurance Committee of the NAYC decision is a final decision. There's no more appeal based on that. So having said that, it means a couple things. At this time, the renewal for Kittredge's accreditation, they're no longer considered accredited at this moment. And we are doing, I really want to talk about the next steps, what we're doing to address this. It appeared, based on the feedback that we received from them, that one of the main reasons we may have not been accredited is Kittredge may not have had, I can't say definitively, but they may not have had the survey completion rate that was needed to meet the threshold in the family relationships, which is a little bit ironic because as someone who sits here, the Kittredge school is a revolving door of parental events, community events, I can't think of many schools that perform so well academically and that have, the community in. It has to be one of the tops in the Merrimack Valley in terms of community being in. So a few things we're doing to address this. Number one is we have reapplied for another visit to take place, and that visit will take place by the end of 2016. More likely, it's probably going to take place in late September or early October. They haven't given us a definitive date, but it will most likely be September or October. And as a result of making this announcement tonight, when we found out about the appeal, we're going to hold a meeting where, as of I think at midnight tonight, emails go out maybe first thing in the morning, where we have an invitation for June 13th. We have a morning meeting and an afternoon meeting for any Kittredge parent of incoming students. So any incoming students, parents, we're welcoming in to the school to do a couple things. One is we want to talk a little bit about the accreditation process. We want to talk about the steps that we're taking as a school, particularly around communication. I think, although you couldn't say that this was one of the primary reasons, but one of the things, there's only 2 kindergartens at Kittredge, and one of them was a job share, so you had 2 different teachers. We have eliminated that position of a job share at the Kittredge school, where there'll be just 1 classroom teacher, and we think that will provide more effective communication, et cetera, in terms of that consistency for parental communication. And part of this invitation, where we're inviting everyone in on June 13th, is really to explain what the accreditation process is, reapplication for reaccreditation with NAEYC, and the steps that we're taking at Kittredge, particularly around making sure that those parents participate in the survey completion component. Like I said, we couldn't pinpoint specifically about the survey completion. It seems that was probably where we're heading, and that could lead to a few things. One, we didn't meet the threshold in terms of participation. We know we didn't have the completion rate that some of the other schools had. And then 2, maybe from a communication standpoint, and this would only be pure speculation, but it could be said that there may have been some comments on there about communication with 2 different teachers in a room, and messages coming that way. I can't, pinpoint that specifically, but that's definitely an area, and the survey completion will be a top priority. I'm pretty excited not only about this meeting that Dr. Rogers will be attending with Mr. Cushing, and Dr. Price and I will hopefully get there as well. I'm excited that there's an opportunity for the incoming folks to meet at 9 if you can, and if you can't, you can come to the evening meeting. But more importantly, even before we got this information, we've really worked hard this year on increasing parental communication around kindergarten. Overall, one of the things we did is we created a welcome bag. I don't know if you've gotten your welcome bags yet for incoming kindergarten, but it has all sorts of information about kindergarten, the process. It has some summer readers. It's really cool. So that's one of the pieces, just a side note there. So that's the update on where Kittredge is right now. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to take them. And Dr. Rogers wasn't available tonight. She's going to join us as well, but she's out of state.
Out of country.
Out of country.
That's even further.
So obviously my sons are going to be kindergartner at Kittredge next year. So we should just cross Harvard, Yale off the college list now, right now? Is that what you're saying? They have no chance?
I would say this, Mr. Teresi, that would be a little premature to do. But in all seriousness, as you know, Kittredge is a level 1 school.
Yep.
It's one of the only 2 level 1 schools we have in the district. And I can't say enough about, just if you look at some recent initiatives of parental involvement, they basically, we had a great project with the gymnasium, but you saw what they were able to bring for the extras.
Right. So on a more serious note, it sounds to me when I heard about this, the frustrating part about it is the accreditation agency does not tell you definitively why it's not meeting accreditation. You're kind of speculating a little bit on it's the feedback or the engagement with the parents right now.
We know for a fact from statistics that the survey completion rate at Kittredge was not as high, nearly as high as the other schools.
Yeah. But it seems to me that
it is frustrating.
Well, it's an accreditation agency, but they don't give you any kind of remedial plan or do they?
So, 2 pieces to it. One is, if you remember why we got into the accreditation process, was about the kindergarten grant and trying to become a full-day kindergarten. I do have to say to tell you at this point, this will not affect our grant status, and the latest information back and forth between the House and Senate bills and the governor is we don't believe that the grant will most likely come through anyway, but this has no effect on the grant, and thank you for bringing that piece up. It is extremely frustrating. I think I was disappointed as someone who's been in the district a long time, but I really had to calm Judy's nerves. I think she was on the phone quite a bit saying, this is impossible, because basically, in a nutshell, other than that survey component and that one standard, family relationships is what they identified. That's the only standard they identified. The Kittredge program is identical to the other programs in town that were accredited. So it's a little different from if you're familiar with the folks who've been through the NEASC process for the secondary level, they typically identify in their standards, more specific. They give you a little more guidance. This was extremely frustrating for us, and I know Mr. Cushing was really disappointed to get the news. At the same time, we think that whatever steps we need to take in terms of this one particular standard that we didn't make, I'm confident that they will probably have 100% survey completion with this incoming group. That's one of the things that they will set time for, and
I'll make sure we do our part.
We'll make sure, make sure you do your part.
We'll be there on the 13th.
The only other thing that I would say is, as we look across the kindergartens, the other thing that was very different was that there was this job share at the kindergarten, and I made some might say aggressive decision a few months ago that I just didn't think that was in the best interest of our kids. And so I made a decision to eliminate job shares at the elementary level. We had a job share at the Franklin, and one of the teachers was retiring. This seemed like the year to do it. I had heard concerns about that, just in terms of the consistency for kids. And so, that will no longer be the case at Kittredge starting in September. So, as we look at what's different, we can look at the survey completion rate, and I think we need to look at the fact that that was a major difference between the kindergartens, and that won't be an issue after this year. So,
thank you.
Yeah. So I'm sure Mr. Cushing is disappointed. I'm sure others are as well. I appreciate how frustrating it is playing guess what I'm thinking with the certifying agency, but it does sound like appropriate actions are in place. And I think once we do regain certification, I think we have to question whether this is something in our best interest to continue forward with, given that it really has no quality value, as evident by this deference.
We do pay, and there are a number of districts who are wondering if it's a good use of resources. My feeling is we can have that decision once we're fully accredited. I don't think we say we're leaving when we're not fully accredited.
No,
I think we get fully accredited, say we are accredited kindergartens, and then make the decision as a group.
We're not going to take our ball and go home.
How long might it take to be reaccredited?
So the turnaround process for the reaccreditation is fairly quick, and when I say fairly quick in terms of NAEYC, I think with something along this nature, it would hopefully be within 8 to 10 weeks.
Okay.
I think would know. And like I said, they've set, they're a little bit like Comcast in the sense of be home between 2 and 6.
We'll be there.
I say it jokingly, but not. They say that they will be back out to visit before December. But based on the conversations that we've had with the agency offline or in our discussions, they're making it a priority, I think, to get out by the end of September or early October, and that's the earliest they can do it.
When we lost high school accreditation a few years ago.
We never lost high school accreditation. We put on warning.
But that was a more lengthy process.
Yeah, but that's NEASC.
So the NEASC
which, by the way, is being completely and utterly revamped.
NEASC, we have had some editorial. So, NEASC, for example, there's several communities that question the value of NEASC, other than it used to be a lever to try to better fund schools in some communities. NEASC, some schools took took a leave of absence from NEASC and said they weren't participating.
I can't think of any schools that did that or.
Maybe one. There's that one.
So there's several schools that did it, and right now there's the superintendent of Bedford Public Schools. His name is John Sills. He really heads up. He's a leader in our superintendent's group locally for the Merrimack Valley, and although they're in Bedford, he joins us up here. He's taken a real lead with Eric Conti from Burlington and trying to make NEASC relevant, because Eric Conti in Burlington actually left NEASC and said, we're state certified. We're state accredited, and we go by the national standards, et cetera, the state standards, because some people really question whether it's an antiquated process and what does it mean. You know, we were on
It's
warning.
just a much more complicated beast than you ask. I would say, having been one of the people who worked with John to really push back on it a year ago.
That's good, though. I mean, a good question.
It's a great question.
Any other comments or questions?
Just a quick one. You said that there was a parental meeting on June 13th, and you said the morning was 9 a.m., but I don't think you said the afternoon time.
Well, for anyone that's interested, this is going out actually, so it's going out blast via email. So I believe.
Put on the glasses.
5:30.
Thank you, there, Mr. Trissy. Believe it or not, it's great because you're going to like this, David. It's June 13th. It's at 9 a.m. It's at 5:30 p.m. for the viewing audience. And at 6 p.m., parents and kids can stay for a playground date.
Nice.
So
great.
And there's also going to be child care offered at this
these meetings. Great.
Thank you.
Any other comments, questions? Anything else for the chair report? Good, thank you.
It was long.
Sorry.
But appreciate the clear, succinct, and brief updates. Okay, let's try to bat clean up here. I'd like to go to old business and hear about our Educator Hall of Fame. Mr. McDevitt.
All right. So the Educator Hall of Fame, our deadline for the applicants closed on May 15th, and we discussed it last meeting, and we kind of came to some consensus that we wanted to, that Mr. Gross and myself would take an opportunity to look at them, but I would share the applicants with the rest of the committee. And so what I'd like to do now is present the names of the 3 nominations that came through, and then make the recommendation to the committee from Mr. Gross and myself. So just a quick reminder, the Hall of Fame, you have to, or the recipient has to have left or retired from the North Andover Public Schools for a minimum of 5 years. They have to have spent the majority of their career here. They have to be recommended by colleagues, parents, and former administrators. And as part of their recognition, there's a classroom in one of the schools, typically the school where they have spent the majority of their career, that is named in honor of them. And so the 3 nominations this year were Judith Bennett, Catherine Delaney, and Kevin McCarthy. And they are, I can't say enough about them. The letters from the faculty, their colleagues, and the community members were really just incredible. They were inspiring. I think anyone who had any of those teachers was certainly very lucky and fortunate, and I think we were lucky to have them in our community. But based upon review, we are recommending that Kevin McCarthy be the 2016 Educator Hall of Fame recipient. And to tell you a little bit about Mr. McCarthy, he was a social studies, language arts teacher, a reading teacher. He was at the Kittredge School. He was at NAMS. He was the girls' varsity soccer coach and spent more than 30 years within the North Andover Public Schools. And can I share your tidbit that you shared with me? I'm not saying this is a deciding factor, but he was actually Mr. Teresi's 5th grade teacher, and he gave him his first detention. Or demerit. Was that what it was? A demerit?
Probably something like that.
Okay, all right. So I thought that was certainly entertaining.
Strong recommendation.
You had me at hello.
Right. Yeah, so he knew Mr. Teresi well way back in the day. So that's our recommendation at this point for Kevin McCarthy.
And congratulations to all 3 nominations. They were head and shoulders above, what one would expect from an educator. But we're in consensus on Mr. McCarthy.
If I could just add, I agree that the nominations were fantastic, but for the recommendation for it to be Kevin McCarthy, I can remember very distinctly, I went to the Franklin School for 1st through 4th grade, and there was redistricting, which we all know can be stressful for the parents and for the kids. and a bunch of us from Franklin went to Kittredge, and Mr. McCarthy made it very easy for all of us. I still have very fond memories of him, and I think you read some of the letters. You can see that it shows through what kind of impact he had on kids. So
Absolutely.
I'm very happy that he's going to the Hall this year.
Great.
And he did give me the attention.
Great. Ms. McDevitt, thank you very much. I know this was a very difficult process. In accordance with our procedures this year, there will be a celebration of the Hall of Fame, and I think he's got to prepare for a presentation.
Yeah, so the hope is that we can combine this with our recognizing teachers who are making professional status within the district, so that when I'm going to ask him to speak to those teachers, I think it's a nice way to bring together welcome to the professional culture within North Andover, and here's somebody who we recognize who made an outstanding contribution. So I thought we could combine those together in a very kind of circular community way.
Yeah, that's perfect. I certainly hope you can attend, and we look forward to hearing
Do you have a
this.
date on that yet?
No, but I'll get one.
Do you have to make a formal motion for that?
Why don't we just to be...
Yeah, I think we do.
Yeah.
So I would hereby move that our Educator Hall of Fame for 2016 be Mr. Kevin McCarthy.
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed? No abstentions? It's 5-0. Congratulations, Mr. McCarthy. And again,
Give him a call in the morning.
and thank you, Mr. McDevitt, for executing the most difficult thing the vice chair has to do. Let's move on to our budget update, if we could, Mr. Mealy.
And given the proximity to our last one, I don't have any new report because it didn't change. What I did want to just mention is what happens at this time of the year. We pretty much close out the expense side of things. If we make any purchases, it's only emergency things that might come up. So we're paying any outstanding invoices, closing out POs, and the only real activity that takes place are salaries for the remaining 2 pay periods and the summer pays. So all of that's encumbered except for the hourly, and that's really the only activity taking place. So we have a pretty good handle on things at this point.
Okay. Any questions or comments? Great, thank you. Moving forward, we have 2 last items. One is the first reading of an increase to 2016 community programs revolving account budget. Over to you, Mr. Mueller.
Yeah, this one's procedural in that when we start the year for our revolving accounts, especially community programs, we estimate on what we think the activity will be. Not surprising with Rick Gallant heading things up. It's done better than we had anticipated. The programs have had more enrollment and more requests for additional programs. So we need to increase the budget so we can pay for those additional expenses that are incurred. We generate additional revenue, which actually means we're going to net an additional $26,703 to the revolving account. But in order to pay out of those line items, we had only budgeted to a certain amount. We need to increase those amounts so we can pay the additional expenses.
Okay. And is there any reason why we can't resolve this at next meeting?
No.
Okay.
It's just as long as it was done by the end of the fiscal year.
Great.
Correct.
Can I just ask a quick question? So 2 of the items that are here are salaries and supplies, and it looks like are those just different
programs?
Programs, okay. I knew that there were different accounting number or GL numbers here, but I wasn't sure.
Right, it might be after school, and then you have the kid stop.
Gotcha. Okay,
Yep.
Perfect. Thank you.
Why do we have to vote to raise the caps when the program's successful?
So when we budget it, we estimate that we're going to spend, let's say, $300,000 out of this salary line item, because that's what we have on staff at the time, but we then add programs during the year, and now we have to pay $330,000, but we only approve $300,000. So one option would be to really overestimate what we think they're going to be, and then you wouldn't have to come, but it's just, it's a way to monitor what's going on in the program.
Any other questions? Great. Moving on to our last topic. This is a discussion on our legal services.
Yeah, so as I learn the job of superintendent, I am learning about some of the more tricky areas of governance where school committee has authority, superintendent has authority, and one of those areas is legal services. And so spent some time, Mr. Teresi brought this to my attention, and I spent some time really looking at what is the law governing legal services. And I am making some recommendations that I thought we could have just a discussion on, nothing to vote on, about what might make sense. So I've put in your packet the DEAS advisory on school government, the MASC issues on legal counsel, and then our school committee policy on school attorneys. I've talked to my mentor, Carla Bear. I've talked to some other superintendents. And there is some confusion about who actually appoints legal counsel. But after looking at the law and really kind of digging into it, I think that it's actually pretty clear. I think that the school committee makes the decision around any legal counsel that we retain. And I'm talking about folks that we have on retainer to deal with. And in our case, it's really two issues. One is special education, and one is personnel labor. And I cannot see that the school committee in recent years has approved legal counsel. So I think it would be an important thing for us to kind of put the reset button on, especially as we're moving towards a town shared services. Yep. And in talking with Andrew Mailer, one of the things the Board of Selectmen voted to do last Monday night was to actually go out for an RFQ for their legal services. So think town, they're thinking land use, et cetera, et cetera. And I thought it made a lot of sense for the schools to mirror that process with the town. And as we were hitting the reset button, we're still going to need legal services, especially in the world of special education. I cannot imagine we're going to have a town attorney who understands that. And I also think it's important for us to retain some legal services in the areas of personnel if we want a second opinion or if it's something beyond the town's attorneys. So I am recommending that we issue at the same time as the town does, and we'll work collaboratively with the town on what the language looks like, because they're drafting that we issue an RFQ for those two areas of legal service. Once those proposals come in, next fall we review them, and then we actually go through the process of appointing legal services in a way that's transparent, but allows us to kind of make sure that we're all on board. Obviously, I'm going to request that you allow us to kind of give you input, because especially in terms of our special education, we have a long-standing relationship, and we'd like to say how that's worked. But I think it's important that we go through this process, and my thought was if the town's doing it, we should do it too, and just kind of piggyback on that process. An RFQ also does allow us to go out to request for qualifications. It doesn't force us to choose the lowest bidder, which I think in this case is really important. We really want to make sure we have top-notch legal supports in these challenging areas, because not getting these things right can actually end up costing the district a lot more than getting it right the first time. So that's my thoughts. I hope that answers questions.
So we would be issuing two RFQs, one for special ed and one for general administration?
Kind of, yeah, labor personnel. We'd have to work on the language of that. Mm-hmm. I think the Board of Selectmen is actually going to review all of the proposals collaboratively. I would look to you guys to decide if you wanted a committee to do it, whatever you want to do, but just thought I'd throw it out there to get your thoughts if that thinking is making sense.
Do we have the expertise to write an RFQ for special ed for legals?
Oh, yeah, we would absolutely have that expertise. Okay. Just because those of us who are in schools, we really do understand what our lawyers do for us. And, part of the hiring process for Donna Straight or any of those folks was their intricate understanding of the law. It's a huge part of that side of our work. More than I ever thought would be possible. So I feel confident that we could do that. Okay.
I've had several conversations with the superintendent about this, and I think the approach she's chosen is by far the best one. I think issuing RFQs for both special ed as well as for personnel is the proper way to go. I do think putting together a subcommittee to maybe review I don't call them applicants. What do you call them? The submittals would be helpful, but I think we would definitely defer strongly, even though it's our appointment. We would want to defer strongly to her judgment as well as the
Assistant Superintendent for Student Services.
There you go. Thank you very much. The new acronym.
And the Assistant Superintendent for Business.
We're not going to use that acronym.
Eventually we will.
And the Assistant Superintendent for Business and Operations, because it's really Jim who works very closely with the personnel.
Right. So we can address that at another meeting, I'm sure, but I think the direction we're heading in, and as well as you know, Mr. Gross, I think we should mention the legal counsel for the town. They have put out that, they have posted that. I think it's open until June 10th.
Yeah.
And at that point, myself and Chairman Gross, who are on that subcommittee with...
And me.
And Dr. Price, as well as a couple members of the Board of Selectmen, will be reviewing some of those applicants too. So.
Yeah, so one of the questions would be, based on the candidate that we identify for the town, we'll have a better feel for
Absolutely.
the gaps
Right.
and the challenges that we may be facing next year. And that would be, I think, more insightful to, the qualities and characteristics we might want to retain, in addition to shared counsel. So.
The response on the 10th is for the in-house lawyers?
For the in-house counsel, yeah. I think there's no doubt we're going to need special counsel for special ed. That's
a given.
No doubt. But you're right. There could be the person could maybe handle other things. So.
Fair. Good. Thank you for doing the research, and thank you, Mr. Teresi, for creating the impetus to figure out how we want to move forward with these policy and requirements. So I guess at our next meeting, we will, vote to enable the RFQ.
Yeah, let me get the language that they used on the Board of Selectmen side, and
Okay.
no need to reinvent the wheel.
Sounds reasonable.
I just wanted to make sure it made sense before I went and...
Okay. Any other comment? Great, hearing none. Since our public has left us, I assume there's no additional public comment unless someone's flying through the door. School committee comment.
Matt, where are you? How come you didn't come down, Matt?
Yeah. We'll see him.
We're going to make him come on the 16th now.
There you go.
I'm going to email his mother.
Don't worry.
Oh.
We know his mother well. He'll be here.
I'm sure he's got a great reason, but
Yeah.
we'll hear about it next meeting.
Or not.
He's trying on his tux for prom.
There you go. Mr. McDevitt, anything?
The only thing I would add or comment on was today was the last youth track meet that Mr. Nugent and his team kind of run, and I mean, it's just amazing. I mean, Scott Young kind of mentioned, just a track meet and the craziness of it, but I mean, the kids running back and forth, just excited about it. I mean, it is truly amazing, and they're doing every single event. And when you see some of these kids, and they are our future on the track program is going to be pretty impressive. I mean, these kids are giving it their all out there. So it's huge kudos to the youth track program and Mr. Nugent.
And we'll all definitely have to come and watch our pole vaulter.
Yeah, absolutely. If you haven't seen him on Twitter, it's freaky to just see how
He goes
high
upside
in the air.
down.
Yeah,
That's the scary part.
So he's like at a different level from everybody.
Oh yeah,
right?
yeah.
How do you do that the first time? I just can't comprehend.
Yeah,
He's a great kid. He's my neighbor. He was the Thompson Fun Run winner. How many years in a row? 5 or 6.
That's
tremendous.
Right. That's right. There you go. Great. Is Maybelline? No? You're good? Great. The only comment I have, our next meeting is June 6th, and at that meeting, one of the agenda topics... Excuse me. Jeez. Yeah, I'm a little tired. June 16th, forgive me. And at that meeting, if I recall, we need to constitute a new board, so we'll have that on the agenda as well. I'll actually be flying in from the East Coast further south, so I will definitely make every effort to be there, but if the airline gods forbid it, I just wanted to let this board know how much of an honor it's been to serve with you. And I appreciate the collaboration and the support as we onboarded, hopefully, our long-term superintendent for the district. So I just wanted to mention that. And that's all I have. If there's nothing else, nothing from the administration, I entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. We are adjourned.